It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
It's blaring.
Welcome back.
Blaring.
Welcome back from the weekend.
Yeah, what'd you get into?
Kids stuff. It rained all weekend because there was a tropical depression coming through. So a lot of video games and a lot of arts and crafts inside. Uh, my my 7-year-old asked me if I could help him make an origami axolotl. Do you know what an
What?
axolotl is?
No idea. No clue.
It's a it's a salamander species, basically. I think they're amphibious, and they have fronds on the side of their head, kind of like this, kind of like frondy. And I'm like, I don't know how to make that out of origami. But then he came up with the answer, and he said, what if I just make one of those chompers that we know how to make already, and then I'll just decorate the side of the head with the whatever they're called, fins, I guess. So we go through the effort of making this, and I make one that looks nothing like this salamander creature. And my 3-year-old wants to make one, and his looks nothing like a salamander creature. It just looks like a piece of paper with scribbles all over it, folded up. And my older son takes it up to my wife and is like, "Look at this axolotl I made." And she goes, "That looks exactly like an axolotl." so, so by just changing the problem from find me an axolotl origami to I'm going to work with what I have, we got an axolotl origami. And that used up about 6 minutes of the 48 hours that are a weekend.
Oh, yeah, that's the beauty of having kids my age is I can make dinner and we can watch stand up and it's not I don't have to be that creative.
I guess I don't have to be. They'd probably be
Yeah.
fine. Did your parents entertain you?
Oh God.
I have no
No.
recollection. I have no recollection of being entertained by my parents.
Yeah, my parents entertained me. They opened the door and said, "Go."
Yeah, that's how I recall it working.
Yeah.
Things like find something to do, or I'll find something for you.
So I is that a thing? Like I feel like unsupervised, unstructured exploration is crucial for kids and not, you've shamed me into being conscious of the old man screaming at all those passersby to get off his lawn. But I do feel like that's a big ball that's been dropped from a socialization standpoint or from a child rearing standpoint. Our kids didn't have that exposure to unstructured exploration. That's a huge part of my independence, my autonomy. I feel like things, maybe genetically, evolutionary psychologists may beg to differ, but I feel like it's a big part that's missing.
It's very difficult to quantify how much time, when you've compressed in your memory, call it call it 10 to 15 years 10 to 13 years of childhood, because I think you'd be hard pressed to find a contemporary parent of a preschooler who was like, yes, I opened the door and let my preschooler go.
You'd be stupid to do it today. I mean, you would not be an intelligent
Wait, so you're
parent.
saying there was a time when just preschoolers also got sent out in recent memory? I don't mean like in the 1800s. I mean in recent memory, a 3-year-old just shown the door, be like, come back in when the street lights come back on.
I mean, three is probably the far, far, far right tail, the
Yeah,
tip of the far right tail, but yeah, no, I don't understand. I don't think that three is an age that ever that has been sent out. Maybe
to the yard.
maybe 1800s as you referenced, but I don't think in modern history that's been acceptable.
I had a friend whose 3-year-old, even 2-year-old sibling had free reign of the house for the most part, but there were 5 siblings, and this was the youngest of the 5 siblings, and the oldest was at least halfway through high school by the time the 2-year-old was running around the house. So there were the youngest one was collectively parented by all of the children and the parents and the neighbors and whoever else was there. So she wasn't unsupervised. She just wasn't directly supervised either, in the sense that one child with one parent who's staying home to parent the kid is like there.
Yeah.
I think my kids can go wander around the neighborhood when they're sometime between 7 and 10. They're pretty close. The older one's close. Buddy system, he's allowed pretty soon. There'll be boundaries. It's like, don't go between these roads and that road. Don't cross so and so big road. Don't take candy from strangers. I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to learn not to take candy from strangers other than, the one kid in your friend group takes the candy from strangers and is never seen again. Like, that's trial by fire. This is the way you learn.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics. I don't know the hows and the whys comparatively, but I believe strongly, whether or not there's more or less of it now, I believe strongly that unsupervised exploration is key, is crucial for kids. It has been in my development. I mean, I think there's a resiliency you get from having to make your own decisions. And I grew up in a rural area, so I was in woods and open fields, and I'd be gone for multiple hours at a time by myself, no one knowing where I was. Might not be the safest thing, but it also was a key part of my development.
How certain are you about how old you were when that was happening?
Real certain. I was younger than 12. Consistently, so fourth grade is what age?
9, generally.
From that age,
Yeah.
the year before even.
By the time I was 10, I was allowed to ride my bike to a certain place, but there was no confirmation that I was or was not in that place, other than I would be in big trouble if I wasn't in where I said I was going to be. I think when I was probably 8 or 9, I had a smaller neighborhood when I was 8 or 9, and I was allowed to go anywhere in the neighborhood, but I wasn't allowed to leave the neighborhood. I was probably 6 or 7 when we found a tire full of tar in my friend's backyard, because his backyard backed on a small farm. And so we were in the woods in his backyard, and we kept going. And then we were at the farm. But past the farm was the big road that we definitely weren't allowed on. But it didn't matter, because on our side of the farm, like on the side near the woods where we were definitely allowed to play, that's where we found the tire full of tar that we poked with a stick and flung at each other.
Well, how did the tire full of tar get where it is, or where it was?
You ever met a farmer before?
Those are, yeah.
Farmer's tar supply. Had to tar something. You never know. You never know when you need to tar a thing.
Have you ever seen the Netflix series Trailer Park Boys?
I've seen clips. I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen much of it though. Is that how you were raised? By watching Trailer Park Boys?
Oh no, that's how I was raised. And except
by being the Trailer Park Boys.
Except my parents, my mother, but both of my parents, we had library cards. She was radical about reading and those sorts of things. But that's the environment that I grew. I like the series. I think a lot of it's funny. I think a lot of the later episodes are funny because they're funny. But I think the writers somehow, even though it's Canadian, the writers capture really, really well a lot of the traits and characteristics of those of us who, of people raised in that environment. Anger, a lot of things that they do really well.
This is just a long way around of saying you want to talk about TV.
It is. Oh, well, yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, but yes.
I'm always thinking about the next segue. This is how it works.
Doing very well with it too. Yeah, interesting. What made me interested, and I'm generally interested in the concept of audiences anyway, but there are a few things, and maybe we can get to them, who knows. But the first is, and I don't want to get into the hows or the whys, but there's a certain political leaning on Twitter that talks consistently about how television's gone to hell. None of the commercials look like they used to. They're advertising to to, who are they advertising to? Everything's going to hell in a handbasket because it's no longer waspy commercials.
Oh my
And
god, why would you open your mouth and say that on the internet? Not you, the people
it,
putting that
it,
on Twitter.
these are not people that have a closet full of white sheets either. I mean, these are like educated,
Like, I expect the world to look exactly like me, and I'm annoyed that it doesn't.
well, and I think
So to be clear, these are people that want there to be more white people and less black people in commercials? Is
I
this the
w-
complaint?
I wouldn't say that. I think that might be probably not too far from the truth, but maybe oversimplifying it. I think
Yeah.
there's a reflexive disdain for a world that no longer looks like the world that they were raised in.
Okay, let me change that then. This is people that don't wanna see women kissing or men kissing in a TV commercial.
A whole bunch of things. Yeah, a whole bunch of things. A white, whether it's interracial households or anything that's not Warden June Cleaver. And I think that's what I get from it.
Have they
Anyway,
considered turning off TV?
well, that's the whole point of my thought experiment, and what I would like to get your take on is they probably don't watch TV. That's the thing.
The odds are good that they are not watching
The
TV.
odds are good. They tuned in for a football game or one of the handful of things that people who have lives and read and have kids, and there's a demographic that watches TV is the point.
Yeah.
And I sent you the article. It's not as juicy as some of the Nielsen stuff that I've read.
My favorite part that's relevant to this is who watches cable.
Exactly.
And we're
It,
saying, I don't know, more than a third of the population watches cable. So like that's sufficient.
and they're old.
That is also what's reflected in these
Yeah,
statistics.
and they're old. But by and large, the Nielsen numbers, and I didn't take the time to dig that
You got to pay for a
diligent.
lot of them too.
Well, yeah, but the Nielsen numbers are even more intricate and parsed in the sense that they go by racial and ethnic demographics. And for me, my gut reaction when I read some of these things on Twitter was, you're not the advertiser's
Yeah, you're not the
focus.
audience. So
Yeah.
you can complain about it on Twitter, but you're buying My Pillow. You're not buying the products that the advertisers are interested in. So
And
you're
you're
already covered.
not watching the shows that are being, I think by and large, the demographics of those, and I think the numbers both in what I sent you and the Nielsen things that I didn't send you, but the demographic numbers play out that advertising follows eyeballs. That's common sense. And I feel like the folks watch, not I feel like, I think the numbers bear it out, that the folks watching TV today, the demographic audience for TV are more multicultural. Like the working class is no longer Rust Belt demographics, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
It's not white union people. Those people are older, so they're still watching TV, probably different shows, but the bulk of linear television is not geared to people who are pontificating on Twitter. And
I feel like that's unambiguously true. If you're spending
yeah.
your time shooting your mouth off about culture wars on Twitter, you are not a core television watching advertising target. Also,
So
my other thing I want to jump in and say here is I I want to push back on that it's common sense that eyeballs follow dollars. That's true. It is common sense that eyeballs follow dollars, but I think that
dollars, other
yeah,
way
the other
around.
way around. The dollars follow the eyeballs. But so I think the point that has been somewhat surprising to me is the extent to which, one person, all of us are willing to put that to a back seat, and the extent to which that kind of gets glossed over, right? So if you're watching TV, or if you're reading the news, or if you're on Twitter, the thing being sold is not content. that the content is not for sale. If you're on the Ghost of HBO, then the content is what's being sold, and subscribership to HBO was tiny. But if you're watching free or near free content where you didn't go to a movie and like pay a ticket at the door to watch the thing being sold is the advertising. So making a comment about the quality of show on the History Channel, you can't have that conversation without talking about where does money come from for the History Channel, and comparing the History Channel versus a news channel versus a network channel. These things all have different business models, and that business model is critical to where things are coming from. I remember, I've like two quick stories about this. I was driving around in a work truck all day long doing landscaping work when I was in high school, and this is my summer job. And I remember listening to talk radio most of the day. So in the morning, I had sometimes I'd be up before Howard Stern was on. Those were the really bad days. And then I listened to all of Howard Stern, and I would listen to all of whatever came on after Howard Stern that was like a local syndicated thing. Howard Stern was in New York. The next thing was somewhere regional. Then I would listen to, over the lunch hour, it was the Bill O'Reilly Radio Factor. And like, I'm young, I don't know anything about this. I just know that it's somebody talking, which is more interesting than the same 20 songs being played 40 more times. So I'm listening, and this was before podcasts had become ubiquitous. So I'm listening to the O'Reilly Radio Factor, and I didn't watch O'Reilly on TV. And I realized after half a summer of this garbage that they had, first of all, 20 minutes out of a 60-minute window were commercials. Like, that's not
Yeah.
an exaggeration. There were only 40 minutes of Bill O'Reilly talking about whatever he was talking about. And then the next thing I realized was that the Radio Factor was simply audio cut together from old bits of show. And I'm like, well, that's why this isn't very good, is because it's the most half-hearted attempt to fill some kind of space that someone will sort of listen to, that we can shove commercials into the middle of. So, like, forget about the shortness of the actual content. The content itself is the definition of filler. And that I was really into journalism and stuff at the time. So I wouldn't say I was shocked, but it was sort of like watching the layers peel back in front of my eyes, and the realization of how did it get this way? Like, why is this even on the radio? And I was looking at it from completely the wrong perspective, because I'm like, music's on the radio because I like music, and you can become a rock star. And once it was shoved in your face and it's not music anymore, now it's just, culture war content. I was like, wait a second. Maybe music's not on the radio because I like music. It
I
was,
bet
welcome to being awakened as a grown up instead of a child.
I bet that 20 minutes of ads on the O'Reilly Factor was like vitamins and reverse mortgages and like
The ones I remember were mattress commercials read by Bill O'Reilly himself. Tempur-Pedic, probably. And I very much remember, and this was another one that was like a real cognitive dissonance. It was Larry King for Welch's grape juice.
I thought he was like the copper bracelet guy.
He may well have been, but like, I'm listening to another Talking Heads radio show, and then Larry King pops in to hawk. Like, it was literally lifted up from Larry King's show, Larry King Live, where him reading about how much he loved Welch's grape juice would at least be consistent with the fact that you were watching Larry King Live. But now it's like his spot from his show. Somebody decided that there was a deal that had to be made where we're going to get Larry King for grape juice shoved into the middle of the O'Reilly Factor. So then I
But
got like O'Reilly telling me about my mattress, and then I got Larry King in the next break telling me about how good his grape juice is before I go back to listening to a recording of O'Reilly. It was a total mind F. It was
so
wild.
the parallels are strong between that, what the awesome story you just explained, and the analogy I started with, is that you, young guy tuning into that, were probably, even though you were a little more open-minded apparently than these Twitter people I'm referencing, you were still, there was a dissonance with that. Was
Yeah.
not advertising geared at you. That was a different demographic.
Right. Yeah.
And the reverse is true too today with linear television.
Yeah.
The ads. Now, here's the game changer. and we can talk about. I'd like to dig into this one for a little bit.
Is
Is
linear television a Terryism, or is that a real
that's a
industry term?
it's a real industry term.
Dang,
Yeah.
learn something new every day.
Although, yeah, the Terryisms will probably you'll catch a few of them. But the connected TV advertising is way more targeted, and
Yeah,
it's spooky. So here's we'll get to this and we'll riff on that for a little bit. But here's a case study that we studied in grad school. I have a data science graduate degree, so that's why I'm interested in this. But the case study was from Obama's 2008 campaign, I believe. It may have been 12. Probably it was 12. Um, and it's a case study of this sort of we studied it from a data science perspective, but it's basically a case study of targeted advertising. And Obama's campaign, this was in the New York Times, a variety of different places, so there's nothing novel or unique about this. They used the all of their staffers and volunteers had to give over and Facebook is the one that stands out. It may have been numerous social media user handles, but they had to turn over their Facebook user handles. And the Obama campaign wrote some crawler code to scrape and identify friends of these users that were undecided voters. So they wrote crawler code to scrape. They went through all the friends of their campaign staff, their Facebook profiles, determined who were undecided, and then in the first of its kind, targeted them. Their set-top boxes worked with cable companies, targeted their cable boxes with targeted Obama advertisements. And that was a case study. Statistically, that's how we evaluated it, but it was also a case study in targeted advertisement. Now, that is such a sort of blanket application today that it's not novel, but that's what I'm interested
I
in.
don't think it's well understood.
So here's
So you need to, so this is the term for it is retargeting, which is it's very, very broad, but retargeting is now shorthand for a very specific set of interrelated things. And if you're looking for the evil empire or the evil advertising empire, retargeting is short for getting data that you didn't know you were giving sent back to you as an ad somewhere else. So
so
so tell more about the function of this. And keep in mind that your example of retargeting for a political campaign is a decade old at this point. So
yeah.
explain more about the mechanics of how that worked and then how it works going forward.
So the punchline, hoping that eventually somebody besides you and me are aware of this podcast, but the punchline for people maybe coming to this is that if you're using connected TV, or at this point even linear TV, but it's internet connected, the ads that you see are not ads that your neighbor is seeing, and they're not ads that your neighbor on the other side is seeing. They are ads specifically targeted to you. Now, there may be, based on browsing history and some commonalities that show up in algorithms, you may get some of the same ads independently, but the ad mix that you see is unique to you. And it's kind of spooky.
Is that
Uh,
true for a cable box now as well, or is this
I
strictly for like a smart TV app?
If you have internet in your home. So yes, if even if your television consumption, you watch linear TV, so you watch cable and broadcast TV only,
Yeah.
but you have an internet connection, the advertisements that you get are still retargeted. So they're still unique to you, and they're based on browsing history. They're based on a lot of different things. A lot of different things, but just know that's the punchline. And I'm okay with it because we were getting it anyway. But your ad mix, the advertisements that you see are not unique to you. Here's an anecdote. So my most recent partner, she was a drug rep, and I'll leave it at that. But she was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and when I would go to her place, all of the ads, all of the ads were for pharmaceuticals. She was an animal pharmaceutical sales rep, but all of the ads would be for pharmaceuticals, literally like all of them. Or one would be sprinkled in. There were some that were, also along that vein, and as far as her interests, things that she would be interested in, those ads would come up as well. So I bet 65% of the ads on her uh, television experience were pharmaceutical ads. And so maybe we're not all that specific because we have, the algorithm picks up different interests, but we all have unique ad sets at this point.
I think everybody gets this when you're talking about you watched X, Y, or Z video on YouTube and therefore you got recommended another video. So if you watched 6 videos about guitars, the next recommendations are all going to be about guitars, and you'll get maybe one is for drums, or one is for generic music, something something something, rock and roll, something something, and everybody grasps that for I watched this on YouTube and therefore got recommended the next thing. But the bigger piece when you're talking about retargeting and integrated systems and um, you know retargeting campaigns is it's not just about what you watched on YouTube. It's what you watched on YouTube is then informing what you get served on your TV. It's informing what you get served in your Instagram feed, in your TikTok feed, or your TikTok FYP, what you get in your podcast recommendations by Spotify. All of the recommendation engines are a business where they're trafficking in what your
Sales.
interests are. Yeah, what a particular user's interest in, and that targeting is now across all platforms, and it's across all services for the sake of closer and closer and closer targeting, and better and better and better ability to, um, you know, theoretically at least, get people the ads that are making them more likely to buy a thing, right? So the whole maturity of advertising integration across places, I think, still is news to a lot of folks who they'll say something like, I didn't even say anything out loud. I just thought about I thought about raisins, and then I got an ad right after I thought about raisins. No, nothing's reading your thoughts. It's just somebody picked up that you needed raisins.
Yeah.
And
Here's
now
another.
that now that I've said this in a room with 3 Apple devices and one of those Amazon Home Assistants, I'm gonna get an ad for raisins now.
Undoubtedly. Here's another interesting example. So Saturday night, I made dinner, family and friends, and my son was here and was doing. He's a sophomore in college, and was doing some homework, and he was building a presentation. And his, obviously some of his classwork is through Canva online. Long story short, I flipped Instagram on late yesterday, the day after. Nothing but the first 5 minutes of feed. The first 5 minutes of feeds was nothing but PowerPoint presentation tricks and tips. And I've literally never had that happen. So it's not only your browsing history and that sort of thing, it's traffic on your network. So if there is, if whoever is pushing traffic out of your network, whatever websites, it can be anybody. It can be not you. You're going to get ads targeted for that, or that traffic is going to make its way into an algorithm of some sort. Maybe not ads, but you're going to get content associated with traffic that's on your network, your home network. So your Wi-Fi, your router, your home net, the way you get internet. If there's traffic on that can make its way to an algorithm, it's going to. And it's another interesting point because they're also on Twitter. I mean, you can really get a pulse, and these are like, I'm not following a lot of celebrity accounts. These are like supposed to be thinking people, but you can get a pulse for the sort of the sky is falling nature of folks on Twitter. And another big point of contention about audiences and advertising is folks think that data sharing, and there are some sinister applications of data sharing. Some institution probably has malevolent intent with data that we capture, but by and large, your data is just to sell you stuff. That's it.
That's right.
That's it. It's just to sell you stuff. And it's not any more or any less significant than that. Now, I think there's one nuance, one caveat. If there's one sort of aggregate application, this is a harebrained Terry sort of theory. I haven't read anything on this or don't know that it exists. But if there's one aggregate use of machine learning that I think is probably ubiquitous and maybe somewhat clandestine, is sentiment analysis on a national scale and probably on a global scale too. So I would be willing to bet that things that we see, and there are two or three that I can think of that we don't want to get into, but there are two or three things that I can think of that there just is no reason that this is a national cultural discussion. It doesn't make sense. And in my mind, there are probably aggregated sentiment analysis engines, whether it's the tech companies themselves or in conjunction with requests from the policy apparatchik to provide sentiment analysis on the population. I think you see things that make their way into public policy. You see sort of national conversations. I don't think some of those things are by chance. I think there are that you think of what we just discussed in terms of targeted advertising. I think if you think of that same process in reverse from a sentiment standpoint, what are people Googling? What are people looking for? And I know that's a thing, but like en masse, is the country angry? Are they this or are they that? Like what are some of the hot button things that we can bring into the cultural forefront? The same targeted advertisements that we get downloaded, I think, are working in reverse too in terms of sentiment analysis and driving
Well,
public policy.
there's quite a bit of there's quite a bit of publicized findings from the NSA and FBI about intentional manipulation of the national discourse, and it's sometimes it's for a reason, sometimes it's for simply sowing discontent. But there's every reason to believe, both based on uh, common sense and lived experience, and pretty authoritative, reporting investigation to discover the extent to which this is true, that if you have a farm full of trolls feeding troll content to, the feeding frenzy that is pick your social media of choice, you can feed content that create like QAnon, right? Like, or Pizzagate, right? It is absolutely possible that Pizzagate, which I think had something to do with aliens living in the basement of a pizza parlor. I'm a little hazy on it, but there's reason to believe that those sorts of things catching fire, to your point, it wasn't an accident that it became popular. And it wasn't a matter of like, oh, well, that was a zany story and that one picked up. Because there's always a zany story. There's always a near infinite number of zany stories. The specificness with which zany stories catch fire and which zany stories don't catch fire, you know, think about it in terms of who are the actors that want to have something happen. There are people that want to sell you something. There are other parties involved that also want to do a thing. If some of those parties are essentially enemies of America's interests, it's not at all unreasonable to think that the cheapest way to create a problem in the United States is inject dire conflict into a place where we're all gathering around a digital water cooler and start making everybody fight each other. That's
Yeah,
a
but
lot cheaper than trying to smuggle a nuke into the United States.
I'm saying a slightly different thing, and what you're explaining is 100% the case. And I think there is evidence how impactful it was, but there is evidence that probably the past two elections, that's an action that has
Yeah,
provided some
I
result.
think the tie-in is that it's not a matter of it is a thing that happened. It is a thing that is happening. And I think
Right.
to your point about the sentiment manipulation. I mean, tell me more about the details of where the deviation is.
Yeah, so I don't think it's manipulation at all. I think it's an organic pulse on what are people searching. How are I used to think about writing a book that had it was like fictitious stories around data, and I made up some algorithm called the violence quotient, and it was an algorithm around sentiment analysis and how the local sports teams were doing, real GDP for the just a bunch of sort of factors that would be a metric, and this probably exists, but a metric that you could assign to an area or a group of people at the zip code level and determine how volatile that the people were in that zip code.
I mean, and do you see that by itself as sinister and nefarious, or is it simply a measure?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say is I don't think that public policy or some of the cultural issues that we get today are the same thing as the troll farms trying to inject an ideology into Facebook before an election. I think this is different. I think this is an upstream push of what's actually taking place in people's homes as measured algorithmically by sentiment analysis. It's a machine learning technique that is if there's one aggregate application at scale other than targeted advertisements, and this is essentially the same thing in reverse, it's that there's the powers that be, whoever that may be, whether it's public policy or
Corporate overlords.
definitely, and that's all the same at this point, but public policy apparatchik has a pulse on where people are. And I think, and I'm just going to leave it at this because we've talked about this a lot. We're not going to be culture current eventy. We're bored with that. But I think there are at least two or three examples that I can think of that make no logical sense other than someone knows sort of on an aggregate level that these are issues that are not isolated, that it's a statistically significant enough group of our population have concern X, or there's a significant enough percent of the population that is exhibiting characteristic X that it needs to make its way into the public discourse or it needs to make its way into public policy.
I think
And
there's a James Bond movie with that as the plot.
is there
This was Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow's news today.
So here we go. I've never seen a single Star Wars movie. I've never seen a single James Bond movie.
I mean, are you aware of both of those things culturally?
Yes.
I feel like you kind of have it covered, honestly. Do you feel like you're missing anything? Of course you don't. If you felt like you're
No.
missing it, you just go watch one.
Yeah. In fact, I would rather. I don't know. I'd rather be waterboarded. I think I don't like. I love technology, but I don't like science fiction. I'm horrible. I've never seen all the zombie shows, the ones that were real popular on FX. I've never seen any of those.
Did you just compare The Walking Dead to Star Wars?
It's to me, it's all the same in terms of my not.
Interest.
Yeah,
Your non-interest.
my non-interest. I don't. It's too. I don't. I there are too many interesting things in reality for me that I don't. I don't need that. I'd rather. I'd
Do you enjoy dramatic fiction, whether written or theatrical?
give me an example because probably no.
I don't know, like a movie about people's real lives where they
Oh
have the
yeah,
struggles of humans,
yeah. So
and there are no robots or aliens or zombies or superheroes.
that's why I like mob movies. A bunch
Oh
of
yeah,
a
okay,
bunch of reasons why I've seen all the mob movies
yeah.
multiple times. I love the mob movies.
So the Mob 2, the Mob 3, The Mob 7, the remobbing.
Well, when I say the mafia movies, I mean like The Godfather. If Martin Scorsese did the movie and it was about the mafia, I've seen it multiple times. Love them.
What's the best one?
The Godfather. Godfather 2 is my favorite of the trilogy.
Yeah,
The third one's not my
not
favorite.
not great. How's The
They
Departed compared to The Godfather?
haven't seen The Departed.
Well, you gotta go see The Departed.
That's on the list now if it's a mafia movie.
Yeah, it's very long. I hope you have a while. You should
Well,
probably watch The Depart. I've only seen The Departed once or maybe twice. I think it's a pretty safe bet that you should watch The Departed as many times as it would take to get to the length of the entire Star Wars series before you start to watch even a single Star Wars movie.
I won't watch Star
I don't
Wars.
think there's anyone on earth who would watch a Star Wars movie knowing that they didn't think they would like it who is wrong. Normally I say keep an open mind, but I think in the case of Star Wars, people who are like I'm not interested in Star Wars, I think 99% of those people are correct and they should definitely not see that movie.
I mean, I try not to judge. Literally, I root for everybody. I don't want to judge, but the people who like dress up as Star Wars characters and wait outside the theater for the newest release and have spend thousands and thousands of dollars on artifacts. I have to really wrestle with not judging those people because to me that's like, and there's nothing wrong with it. It manifests itself a number of different ways, but it's such a fantasy. Like it's such
Do you know what a Wookiee is?
no,
Are you familiar with Chewbacca?
yeah.
Okay, Chewbacca is a Wookiee. It's a type of
It makes me
alien.
it makes me sweat to hear you say that.
You should make it probably made whoever had to wear that Wookiee suit sweat to be a Wookiee. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a mind picture for you. Are you ready?
Ugh.
Somebody that you don't know, you don't know this person directly at all, and they're wearing a Wookiee costume. It's very accurate. It's true to life. Like they look just like Chewbacca. They have his little mini bow and arrow thing. They've got that. They've got the bandolier doohickeys that he's wearing. So it's, the characters in Star Wars were always a blend of swashbuckling adventure hero and science spacey thing, right? So like an astronaut doesn't wear a bandolier; they wear a spacesuit. But because Star Wars is actually just a big giant space adventure, not really a sci-fi story per se, that's where you get like the cowboy stuff. So imagine this dressed up Wookiee. They've got custom ordered accessories and accoutrement. They're waiting in line for an IMAX premiere of a re-release of a Star Wars movie. I don't know which one. It doesn't matter. Let's just call it episode 20, Reversal of the Seth Guy. Okay, that's what it's called. Episode 20, Reversal of the Seth Guy. The Wookiee person is in line. Do you have this in your mind?
I do.
Do you have the smell of what this line smells like in your mind? Popcorn,
A lot of weed, tons of weed.
desperation, weed, teenage acne. Like these are the smells that are blending.
Are
Are you with me? Because there's
I
a
am.
question coming. I swear to God,
All
it's
right.
for real. The question is, what's that guy silently judging you for?
Oh, so I love this question and I know it. I know full well. Square business dick, that the whole whatever.
Stuffed shirt.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just thinks you're uncool.
Yeah, and it's I see it and I don't receive it because they don't know me. And that's what I try to tell myself with that scenario too is this may be a program, it probably is a programmer, somebody who's like really smart, knows the hell out of some Python or some C plus.
Maybe. A lot of dumb Star Wars fans.
Oh, yeah, I just think I don't know, regardless of occupationally or educationally, what someone's attained.
Yeah.
If your thing is to buy a Chewbacca uniform and go stand in line
Well,
outside of
it's
a
not really a
theater,
uniform.
I,
It's more like that's his fur. That's like saying bought if you bought a horse suit, you bought a horse uniform. I think the uniform is just the thingies that go across his chest to hold all of his, I don't know, his supplies. Who's your least favorite superhero?
least favorite.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, hold on. Before you answer, have you heard of Wolverine before?
I know there was a movie recently, a Wolverine movie, right?
I have no idea. I have no idea if there was a recent Wolverine movie. Okay, but who's your least favorite superhero?
Um, so like the bad guys or the good guys or just any
Any fantastical superhero. What's the worst one in Terry's mind?
probably Superman. He's the most cliche, and it's not his fault. He's probably just a victim of being around for a long time, but he's just cliche.
It's not Superman's fault.
It's not his fault.
He
He's been
didn't do
written.
anything.
He's been written into too many things. I have to say I've never seen any of those Marvel movies. That's another batch of movies that I've never seen.
Superman's a DC property. They're blood competitors.
See, I wasn't a comic book guy.
I'm just playing the foil here as much as I can.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't judge. Like my brother's heavily into that stuff, and he's a smart guy. But that was not my scene. I enjoyed sports and I think real life things. I guess sports is fantasy too for most. It's funny the parallels. I was watching my daughter and I had like 20 minutes yesterday before we left, and just turned on. I like to once in a while turn on NFL because it reminds me of the routine of childhood. Uh,
Sundays, man. Yeah.
yeah. So I turned on. I think it was the Ravens and the Colts, and they did a crowd shot. It was at Baltimore, and that's why I knew you had rain yesterday because it was very rainy there. But it was at Baltimore. There were people with like Raven masks and really done up. I mean, really, really, really done up. And I said, sweetie, if you ever date a guy or a girl that goes to any sporting event with a Raven mask on, you need to run. Like that's your sign that it doesn't matter how
Just a
nice.
hint.
Yeah,
Stay away.
things are not going to end well.
I don't think that's too broad a brush to paint with.
Where are you? I don't mean it. This comes across very judgmentally, and I don't mean it that way because people are good people, regardless if they have I'd probably have some eccentricities that people would find odd as well. But
No, you don't.
where are you in your life if you get up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to the football game today. I need to find a Ravens head. Like I need to wear this Ravens head, or I need to paint my whole body the color of the team that I'm like.
I
Where?
think my favorite part about this line of reasoning and thought is as an American in 2023, I don't consider painting yourself a team's colors or wearing a mask to be particularly, out of left field. If that's the appropriate sports analogy here, I mean, it's not. I don't know anyone who does this, but if someone told me that that was their thing, I could probably think of 25 people that it wouldn't surprise me if they either do that currently or have done it. And it would be pretty consistent with my understanding of them as people. And there are so many things that people do, even public things that people do that people are into. I think it's fascinating to ponder on how much do the people that you only know a sliver of, because that's
Yeah,
the way you've interacted with them. And this is just take the people you know, right? So the typical person can, actively manage maybe 500 relationships. So that's everybody you know, all your family, all your friends, all your coworkers, every lead in the pipeline for your sales, whatever, every person you can handle. Like the human capacity for maintaining a relationship starts to fall off a cliff after around 500 people, right? So even assuming that we're just talking about that 500 people that pretty well, you're on a first name basis and you're maintaining that relationship. Now think about the next 1,000 people, or hey, God forbid, the next 5,000 people, or the next 50,000 people. It's very, very likely that by the time you get to the next 500,000 people, which is only 3 stadiums full of people, by the way, 3 stadiums,
college
not even the
stadiums.
biggest stadiums, the mediumest stadiums. It's like 2.5 Michigans. Anyway, you get to 2.5 Michigans full of people. The stuff that those people are doing that you've never even heard of because you don't have it in your 500-person circle could blow your mind all
Yeah.
day.
So this is my point that I'm making about sentiment
Audiences.
analysis and
Yeah.
sentiment analysis at scale is things that I am like, where in the flying hell did this come
Right.
from? This culture stuff, especially, it's coming from somewhere. And it's not top down. I think in a lot of instances, some there are the election interference, potentialities that you've discussed. We don't know how much of an impact that did or didn't have, but I think there's been plenty written on the fact that it did occur. But I think there are there are some real mysteries to me that make their way into popular policy and cultural discussions that are not by chance. And just think of it as the targeted ads that we receive on our set boxes, on our cable, whatever it is that we have internet in our house. That same thing works in the reverse direction, where what you're sending out to the internet by pulling things down, the data that's being scraped from your internet experience is going into some sentiment algorithm or into some pool of algorithms from the big tech companies. And I don't have any inside information and I don't know how those things are used. But I think there are strong indications over the past few years that it's not staying within the walls of Mountain Valley, California, or wherever these companies are, that they're making their way into aggregate algorithms for policymaking, for cultural discussions, these type of things. It's not in a vacuum.
Did you intentionally call it Mountain Valley, California?
Mountain View. Mountain View. Did I
No,
say Valley?
let's go with Mountain Valley, California. I like that more.
That's where the water is bottled.
Yeah, Mountain Valley, California. I have a specific case here that I would say the way that this is impacting my interactions with my circle of 500 closest friends. I go out of my way. So I work in a number of different pretty esoteric fields. Some of it's software programming, some of it's factory equipment, some of it's
Robots.
marketing, robots. Yeah, like the things that I spend my days on are not necessarily sort of like household stuff. And in my case, it's not like I have a PhD in astrophysics where I have a ton of knowledge about one thing. I have a lot of moderate knowledge about a wide swath of difficult, not necessarily difficult to grasp, but not common dinner table conversation or dinner party conversation type things. So I make a huge amount of effort to try and explain simply and quickly the things that I'm talking about if they're in the weeds. I try and get them aired out as quickly as possible, and I try and avoid talking over anybody's head because it's rude. And I try to like find the common ground because I'm consistently surprised, like, oh, so and so robot thing actually has a very direct application to some other thing. Like manufacturing processes versus kitchen practices. Like I can talk to my food, like your brother and I could have talked for a very long time about process flow and ergonomics in a kitchen. I don't spend time in kitchens. I spend time in manufacturing facilities, but I'm still, the parallels are definitely there. So what I've found in the last, call it 3 to 5 years, is the extent to which my thinking that other people know the thing that I know has gotten a lot worse. Right. So I have to go broader to get to a thing that other people know. And it's because what I'm learning about is being fed directly to me and then reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And what you're learning about is being directly fed to you and being reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And there's no accidental common ground between your interests and my interests. The only reason that both of us have, interests in like take production equipment, right? Like, so we both have knowledge of music playing and writing and stuff like that, but we have gigantic gaps in what each of us knows about production and music tech. And that was a specific example where I'm like, Terry must know this thing. And then you're like, I don't know that thing. And I'm like, well, why did I think Terry knew this thing? And I'm just getting fed YouTube videos all day long of more of this thing, more of this thing, more of this thing, more of this thing. And you're getting fed, you know, cultural critiques of cow mask wearers. And that's why the two of us are like not coming together. And then replay that across every relationship. You know what I mean?
It's a good point, and I think that's a blind spot for me.
Was it a cow mask or a raven mask? I'm sorry. I'm not sure how I got to cow mask. The raven and the Chewbacca were all blending in my mind.
It was a Russell Crowe mask.
Yeah, guys in Russell Crowe masks. Kids today in their Russell Crowe masks.
No, I think that's a blind spot for me, probably for everybody. Like an egocentric blind spot, and that what I'm interested in and what I spend time knowing about, everyone is interested in and everyone's knowing about. But I'm appreciating more and more how that's not the case.
Well, that's
And
human nature to be interested in your own thing. What's not human nature is to have your own ego stoked by retargeting campaigns all day, every day. I mean, that's not human nature.
yeah, and that's an interesting sort of extension of this conversation. Is I can feel I know these external levers. Obviously, I don't do them, so it's not like I know the nuances of, you know, what makes somebody good at that or not. But I know these external levers exist,
Mhm.
and I can feel when there's a tunnel in terms of content. I'm in tunnel vision world, and
Yeah.
I intentionally went out of that. And if I see you know, I share things politically, and I'm not scared to say this. I'm very much a pragmatist. I have first principles, but I'm a problem solver. We've both discussed this. We want to see policies that solve problems. But I will give anybody. I don't have a tribe. I don't have a I vote this way. This is the person I vote for. I want smart people that have read the books and have a an assortment of first principles that they want to solve problems through. But I've found that certain, you know, if I'm not careful with who I follow, then I get fed this algorithm of, oh, you like this person, well, you'll like this person too. And then I get and it tends to be right of center folks. And I'll get and I'm not saying that that's who I am. I'm saying that I follow a lot of people, and I'll get, if I find that I'm getting too much of a certain kind of content, I have to break out of it. I want out of it, and I will intentionally go read other things and other articles. That's why I think these algorithms hate me. Is I'm hard to pin down, both in terms of things to sell me, and especially like cultural and societal things. I'm all over the place.
I have a non-recommendation to take us out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I recommend you not read the book called How to Talk About Books You Haven't Read.
Oh, I
Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
Pierre Bayard or
It's a real
Bayard.
book. I thought you were being sarcastic.
I know. This is a real book, and I love it because it's talking about the scope and scale of culture, the breadth of audience. It's talking about the commonality where, in fact, like, it is physically impossible to read all the books no matter
Yeah.
how hard you
Oh,
try.
yeah.
Being well read is a fool's errand, right? And unless because what you're defining as well read is others perceive me as being well read, right? That's, or I perceive myself as being well read.
And I
So,
want no part of that. Those dicks, you know, the people do it with music too. I feel like we do it sometimes, but
well, think
the,
about this: if you're once you're done reading all the books that it takes to be well read, and you've spent your entire lifetime trying to be well read, you've still got
a
all the
fraction.
music. You got all the
Yeah.
music. You got every artwork that's ever been created by all of humanity. You've got every play that's ever been performed, and
So
you've got every movie ever made.
here's a question for you. You bring up that concept, which I really appreciate. So I very much respect, even though we've talked about Talib.
Yeah,
I don't have to buy everything that someone's selling to think that person is intellectually, you know, something that I appreciate their opinion. So
right.
you have Naval Ravikant. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I respect very much. He's a finance guy, Navalravikant. He's a finance guy, but he's also heavily influenced by Eastern philosophy. I've mentioned my very much being influenced by Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Mhm.
He's influenced by some of these same folks as well. So Ravikant is of the mindset that you never read a book all the way through. You skim until you have the essence of the book and go on to the next one, so you can take in lots of new ideas that way. Talib, on the other hand, it, especially with the classics, makes the point that you should it should take you forever to finish a real, like the brothers Cosmonaut, or one of the classic pieces. It should take you forever to read it because you're consuming every word as it's intended to be consumed. So two very intelligent people with different schools of thought on that, and I don't have a perspective. I just think it's in line with what you just mentioned. But there's nobody worse. I don't. I read. We both read, but I
Whoa,
don't.
whoa, whoa! Don't let me into that. Don't loop me in here.
I know you read, but there's no there, like I can't stand the person that, it's like the TV preachers in the 80s that would, bring their Bible out. These people that beat you over the head with books. Like, what's it prove? What's it matter? You do it for you, and it's a you thing. And that's kind of the way I feel about it. I read some books that I feel like are really, really helpful for me in forming perspective. But I don't want to rush out and try to seem like I'm smart because I've read this book. It drives me insane.
There you go. That's Terry's last bone to pick of the day. See you tomorrow. And by the way, get off my lawn.
And by the way, get off
For
my
for real,
lawn.
for real. That's it. We're done. Bye.
All right.